The Pittsburgh Penguins made a surprise trade on Monday, acquiring Yegor Chinakhov from the Columbus Blue Jackets, but did they overpay for him? Pat and I are going to discuss that right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Send Them For Wet. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And you can follow the show's Instagram account at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen / watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Pat, yesterday I thought, hey, we're just going to preview this game against Carolina. I can talk about how much I hate watching Carolina Hurricanes hockey. And then Kyle Dubas was like, you're also going to discuss a big trade because the Penguins acquired Yegor Chinakhov from the Columbus Blue Jackets in exchange for a second-round pick in this next year's draft, a 2027 third-round pick, and forward Danton Heinen. And this is a player that we were actually asked about during a Fan Take Friday episode back in mid-July. Pat, I went back and listened to part of that episode to see what I had to say. And, you know, I did say at the time that I think Kyle Dubas should look into us. Obviously, he did because he got the player. But I also did say that Columbus is going to try to get as much value as they can, even though they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because Chinakhov had requested a trade in mid-July. And I kind of low-key warned, like, they're still going to try to get a lot of value out of this. And in my opinion, some people may, come out with their pitchforks for me. That's okay. I think it is a little bit of a slight overpay for Chinakhov. I like the player when he's fully on. He has a blistering shot. He's very fast. He's good defensively, but the injury concerns are still there, and the consistency concerns are also still there for me. So I'm just not sure I'm fully, on board with giving up a potential top 40 pick. That Blues pick is probably going to be in the top 40 of this next year's draft. I'm fine with giving up that pick, but maybe for someone that's a bit more reliable, just maybe a bit of a better player, in my opinion. Now, I would love to be old takes exposed on this. He goes out there, scores 10 to 20 goals. I'm out here looking like a complete idiot behind the microphone. But I always pride myself on being objective. And to me, Pat, this feels like a little bit of a slight overpay. I would not have given up a second. If you wanted to do a third and a fifth, a third and a fourth, and Danton Heinen, I would be way more okay with that. I just really keep coming back to giving up that second for him. I don't know, just feels a little rich for me. I know you're going to disagree because you and I have been talking about it, and it's going to make for a really good discussion. So I'm going to hand this over to you. That's my take on it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to disagree with you so much as I'm going to take what you're saying and spin it a little bit, because you look at the Penguins draft coming up this offseason. They've got a first-round pick, they've got 2 seconds, and they've got 2 thirds. They don't have any picks in the 4th. They don't have any picks in the 5th, but then they've got the 6th and 7th. Yes, this was a slight overpay for Chinakhov. But here's the thing about that. The Penguins had the capital to pay that price.
That's true.
If they would have just had 1 or 2 picks in those rounds, I would have looked at this trade today and gone, you should not have risked that for this much of a wild card, because the shot is there, the speed is there, the talent is there, but the questions remain, can he put it together for extended stretches, and can he stay healthy for stretches? But when you compare the amount of capital that the Penguins had to what they ended up giving up for who they got, this is also exactly what Kyle Dubas said he wanted to do. This is a huge part of what his plan was. He wasn't going to hoard draft picks like a squirrel going into hibernation with its nuts and just hanging out in its tree all winter. He was going to compile a lot of draft picks, and yes, he was going to use a ton of them because, as I say on this show quite a bit, he went to the Bill Belichick School of Asset Management, of where it's more likely you're going to hit on a prospect if you draft 4 or 5 of them rather than 3 or 4 of them. And it also creates that competition. But at the same time, you also use a lot of those picks as a way to go get younger talent that has fallen out of favor with another team. And that is exactly what happened with Chinakhov. And the last thing I'll say about him, and this is a little bit of copium, a little bit of me twisting the knife at a divisional rival. Columbus hasn't exactly been known for breeding and keeping elite talent. We have seen so many players who had flashes, had moments, and then they went elsewhere and got better. And there was clearly a rift between the organization and the player here. Now, this doesn't automatically mean that he's going to show up to Pittsburgh and put it all together. But I think given the fact that A, he wanted out, and B, he has now gotten out, he has the ability to turn that corner because he does deserve credit that he could have held out. He could have not played. He could have thrown it in the tank. And yeah, he hasn't had the greatest of seasons so far, but he deserves credit for still showing up. He could have very easily jumped over to Russia. He could have held out. He did none of that. He stayed with Columbus. He tried his best to make it work, and the organization eventually was able to get what they needed for him.
I do agree with that aspect of it, and I do think he's going to have a big chip on his shoulder to try and prove a lot of his doubters wrong. I mean, you look at some of his numbers for this year, Pat, only 29 games, 3 goals, 6 points during that time. Last year, plays in 30 games, 7 goals, 15 points. His best season of his career came in 23-24, 16 goals, 29 points in 53 games. Most games he's played in a season came in his first season in the league, 21-22, where he played 62 games. It's funny. You know, if you just do a side-by-side comparison of him and Philip Tomasino, again, I'm not comparing them overall as players, just their raw production. And Pat, I sent this to you. Chinakhov in 204 games, 37 goals, 77 points. Tomasino, he's played in 218 games, 34 goals, 95 points. Tomasino, 24th overall pick in the 2019 draft. Chinakhov, the 21st overall pick in the 2020 draft. It's actually fascinating how similar just some of the raw totals are and just where they were picked. Pat, one player goes for a 4th round pick. The other one goes for a 2nd, a 3rd, and a rostered player. So that part to me, it was just very interesting. Again,
I also do think you have to add in the caveat that Don Waddell is a pretty good GM. And as we're finding out, Barry Trotz is not a very good GM.
No.
Waddell did well here, I think. And I think the Penguins did well too. Just I'm not going to give Kyle Dubas an A++ and start tweeting about fleecings and dunkings and all that stuff. I think at the end of the day, and then I'll toss this back to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think both teams did well here. I think the Penguins got the kind of player that they have been trying to get and that they are going to have to continue to try to get for the next couple of years. They paid a bit of a steep price, but you moved a guy who you kind of were expecting to move, and you had a surplus of picks, so you were able to toss a couple extra in, and the Blue Jackets were able to move on from a player that didn't want out, and they got value for him. So I think it's a mutually beneficial trade, and for the Penguins, they have the potential to become the winners if Chinakhov really finds his game. But at the end of the day, 1 year left, RFA, we'll see what happens.
And that's the thing. I think they have the ability to come out as a potential winner in this trade if he does well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is right now, I do think this is a slight overpay. I don't think I would have included the 2nd to get this player. But if he goes out there, balls out, gets a bunch of goals, starts producing, starts looking like the player that, we saw in 23-24 when he almost had 20 goals, and you can have a good second half of the season. Okay, I'm going to warm up to it more, and maybe there's a chance, Pat, that he stays on the team for the next year or two, just because, again, he's an RFA at the end of the season, makes $2.1 million on the salary cap for the rest of this year. So those are my main takes on it. Let me know what you think about what I think about the trade, what Pat thinks about the trade down in the comments. You can send us a DM and all that too. So again, people, I am very open to being wrong about this. I think it's a slight overpay, but if he goes out there, plays extremely well, I think he's probably going to be on the 3rd line if I had to guess, maybe him and Ben Kindle, perhaps. I know Ville Koivunen has struggled just eye test wise. His underlinings have been fairly good, but eye test wise just hasn't fully been there. Maybe you put Chinakhov's blistering shot, his full steaming speed with Kindle. I think you could potentially see them have some chemistry with Walker McGroarty. We'll see. That's my guess as to where I think he's going to play. Seth Rohrbaugh just reported at the morning skate that he walked in while the team was skating, so time will tell if he plays tonight. But again, let us know what you think about this trade down in the comments. You can send us DMs as well. That will do it, though, for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, Penguins are going to try to beat the Carolina Hurricanes after being swept by the Hurricanes last year. Pat and I are going to preview that game for you all right after this. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, which is Game Time. There's nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting tickets, long queues, endless screens, and prices changing at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pulled up the Game Time app to check out upcoming NHL games, including tonight's one against the Hurricanes, and was surprised at how fast it was to find great seats. The app, it's very easy to use. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes. One of my favorite features is seeing the view from my seat before buying, so I know exactly what I'm getting. The zone deals, they are also very clutch. You choose a section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. And Pat, Penguins Hurricanes round one comes your way tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time from PBG Paints Arena, the final game of our Year in Lord 2025 for the Pittsburgh Penguins before the calendar flips to 2026 in a couple of days, or the Penguins, of course, will be hosting the Red Wings in the first half of a home and home against them. They'll play them again on Saturday. Penguins went 0-2-1 against Carolina last year, lost all three meetings against them. They have also lost 4 of their last 5 to the Carolina Hurricanes. Their last win against Carolina coming March 26th, 2024. That was a 4-1 win. Lost 4-1 against them last year, 5-1 against them, and then 4-3 against them in Raleigh. This Hurricanes team, I've said it a couple of times already, they are a very tough watch, boring watch. I don't like the way they play, cycle, point, shot, repeat, but I've said this key a lot of times on the show. I'll repeat it here. If you can box out their forwards from the front of the net, you will have an opportunity to really win this game. They pride themselves on a lot of those point shots, looking for deflections in front of the net. If you can box out their forwards to prevent all of that, I think you will have a good opportunity to win this game. But again, we've seen how the Penguins have been defending this year, especially as of late. It has not been pretty. So I question their ability to do that on a very good basis tonight. But again, that's the key. That's one of the keys, at least, if you really want to win this game. Carolina, always very stingy defensively. So when you get a really good chance, you're going to have to bury it. That's just the way things go with Carolina. You look at their stats this year, Sebastian Aho, 14 goals, 35 points in 38 games. He's been very good. Seth Jarvis, he's played in 34 games, has 19 goals. But the biggest thing for him right now, Pat, is he's hurt. He's on injured reserve, which is a really big loss. I feel really bad just because he's been awesome for them this year. Jacob Slavin, who I think is the best defensive defenseman in the league, he's also listed as outs. Chinakhov, their goaltender, he is going to be out for a while. Shane Gostisbehere is also listed as out. Also, one last thing, they are playing on the second half of a back-to-back with travel. So the Penguins, they're sitting here, they're waiting for them. Hopefully that comes in handy here against the Hurricanes. But again, man, some of my keys, boxing out their forwards. When you get a high danger chance, you better convert on it. And another thing, Carolina, they usually have a very good penalty kill. They're one of the penalty kills that is kind of like a power kill with the way they can be very aggressive. When you get power plays tonight, better make sure you're converting on those as well. So those are just a few of my keys. Also, making sure you're slowing them down because every shift is like game 7 to them. They're very aggressive along the boards down low. So again, just 3 to 4 keys for the Penguins to potentially win this game tonight.
This is the part of the program where I know our audience is going to wince because I'm going to say something that you hinted at there, Hunter. When you play the Carolina Hurricanes, you have to win the front of the net.
Yeah.
You have to win the front of your own net because they play hockey the way I play EA NHL Ultimate Team when I first download the game. I know that I have no real skill, and I'm not saying the Carolina Hurricanes don't. I'm just saying this is the type of game I play when I have an Ultimate Team that isn't very good. You possess the puck down low, you get it up top, you look for shots, you look for deflections and rebounds and chaos in front because that is their game to a T. And if you are able to win that net front, and it doesn't have to be elite net front defense, it just has to be good defensive awareness. Don't let their forwards behind you to set up a screen to get there for the rebound. You don't even have to really do the best job boxing out. You just have to be aware of where the puck is so you can clear out those rebounds. You can give Skinner, if he is indeed the starter tonight, at least a little bit of a look at the point shot. And that is really the key to beating the Carolina Hurricanes because they love that greasy net front game. And if you're able to neutralize that, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to win because you listed off some names. There still is a ton of talent on this Carolina team, but you take away their biggest advantage, which is that type of game, you can get a win for them. You brought this up as well. It is another advantageous moment for them, just like it was against Chicago. You're playing a team in the second half of a back-to-back. They're going to have to travel. You've got to jump on them early, just like they did against Chicago. And much like Chicago, doesn't have to be a perfect 5 to 10 minutes. When you get your opportunities, put them in the back of the net. When you get your opportunities, hem them deep, play a little physical, really show them that they're going to have to truly grind out a win. Because, again, against this Carolina Hurricanes team, I know we in Pittsburgh love our fast, skilled, top-level hockey, but to beat a Carolina team like this, you're probably going to have to put your pride to the side for a game and play a disciplined, boring kind of game and outweight them.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun to watch. I'll tell you all right now. This team is never really fun to watch, even when they're in high-scoring games. It's a lot. I remember when they would play the Islanders in the playoffs, and I'm like, yeah, that's not a series I really want to watch too much of, especially, when Lou is still there and all that stuff. Obviously, the Islanders are a lot more fun to watch this year compared to recent years. But when those two teams were going at it, when they were playing both boring, I'm like, yeah. So, as you said, got to stay disciplined. You're going to have to potentially, iron out a 3-2 win, something like that, maybe even a 2-1 win, potentially with the way Carolina plays in their own zone. Again, it's big that Jacob Slavin is not out there, just considering how elite he is in his own zone at suppressing shots, just going from defense to offense. He's always out there also against Crosby's line and has done a fairly good job against him, at least in the last few matchups. So him not being out there, Pat, that is a huge loss. Again, Seth Jarvis, he has also been great. That's another big loss. So again, two of their best players are out in this one. Penguins will have to look to take advantage of that. I mentioned the penalty kill. It is weird that they only rank 16th in the league in penalty kill. Usually this is a unit that's well into the top 10. I still maintain that this is a power kill and that they can run. Only a few teams can do it. Penguins power play, I want to see them cook here. And I still want to see the top line cook a bit more, especially one player I want to see really break out tonight, Pat, Rickard Rakell. He's been very quiet since coming back. I think he's been very quiet for a lot of this year as well. I want to see more out of him. I think this hopefully can be a start of it because he just hasn't been nearly as good this year. I know part of it, he was out for a while, but even before he got hurt, just wasn't seeing the same from him at the start of the year. So I'm keeping my eye on him tonight.
He's knocking at the door, I will say. I agree overall that he has to be a little bit better. He's got to start producing more than he has been. But you look at the totality of his game, and I think it's there. He's in the right places. The chances aren't as plentiful as you would like, but it looks like a player very similar to his line mate in Brian Rust, where when the dam breaks, it is going to break for him, because that's also just kind of been the story of his career is when he scores in bunches. And Sometimes it lasts for weeks on end to even a month. And there's times where it goes a week or two and then recedes a little bit. But I look at Raquel's game over the past couple of weeks since he's returned, and I see a player that's knocking at the door. And once he finally makes his way through, I think he's going to be all right. But again, the challenge is that first one has to fall, and then you see how he plays after that, because we have seen that with so many players where it just feels like they can do everything but score. They're doing everything right, and the puck just won't fall for them. If he gets one tonight, especially in a big game like this, I think that really will do wonders for his game moving forward.
Right. And I'm not trying to make A to B comparison here. I kind of did say the same thing about Vili Koivunen when he got his first goal this year. I was like, oh, they're going to come in waves. Well, I was dead wrong about that. Again, the underlyings are great, just hasn't translated to a lot of, offensive success for Raquel. Obviously, it's different because he's been a very steady to good goal scorer in the NHL throughout his entire career. So I think there's a better chance that once he gets this next one, they're going to come in waves. So I just want to see a bit more out of him. I like the way he's playing defensively on that line. He's the best defensive player on that line. I just want to see the offense because it just hasn't been there since he came back from the injury. But I think that's going to do it for the second segment. Coming up to end the show, Pat and I are going to discuss a few lineup notes that just came out right after the morning skate from head coach Dan Muse. So stick around for that. That's coming up right after this. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. And Pat, you hinted at it. It will be Stuart Skinner starting against the Carolina Hurricanes tonight. No surprise there. Dan Muse is continuing the 1A, 1B rotation that he had been doing virtually all season until Tristan Jarry got traded. And, Jarry was getting more of the 1A starts towards the end of his Penguins tenure. He was kind of starting to go away from the rotation just because Jarry was outplaying Shilovs. But now that he's gone, you're seeing him rotate the starters once again, which is totally fine. I like the way Shilovs played in Chicago, but you also don't want to overwork him. So Skinner gets the start tonight. And also for Yegor Chinakhov, he will not play tonight, according to Dan Muse. He just got in this morning, as I touched on earlier in the show as the morning skate was wrapping up. So I'm sure they'll get him a practice, and then he'll play later this week, probably against the Red Wings on January 1st, if I had to guess. So those are a couple of lineup notes. Also, Erik Karlsson, he will be available. He missed yesterday's practice with an illness. Connor Dewar was also back on the ice for today's morning skate. I assume he's going to be in the lineup as well. And, we also did not discuss this somehow. Ryan Graves is set to be placed on waivers at 2:00 today. Pat, no surprise there. I saw some people freaking out about this on social media. Has he been a bit better since coming up? Yes, but come on, people. The bar is still very, very low. I don't think it's worth freaking out about considering how the rest of his Penguins tenure has gone. Chase and Ivany, I thought were fairly good in that game against Chicago. At least run with that pairing for a little bit to see if it can be something on the bottom pair. I know I said you're kind of just rearranging deck chairs, but at least for one game, it was good. So you can keep continuing it. It's not worth getting mad about Ryan Graves going on waivers. That contract is bad enough, and his play has been mostly bad for his Penguins tenure. I know, I guess since coming up, he'd been a little bit better, but it's not worth getting mad about.
Well, I think that was also kind of the tell that Chinakhov was probably not going to play tonight, because if Chinakhov was going to draw into the lineup, you would probably have sent Koivunen back to Wilkes-Barre just because he doesn't have to pass through. You can just send him right down. You can hit the roster limit. So I think that did kind of tell us that he wasn't going to be ready immediately. So, and I think that's a smart call by the Penguins. It's a young player. He's had a bit of a tumultuous few months with the trade request and everything else. You bring him into the organization, you get him familiar with the facilities, you get him familiar with the staff, get him a practice or two, and then you draw him into the lineup and see what he can do. And as for that bottom pair, I mean, this didn't make it onto our episode yesterday because we had so much to talk about. But Shea and St. Ivany a couple years ago showed that they had some good chemistry and were a solid bottom pair. Now, I'm not going to overreact to one game in a small sample size, But the history is there that they have shown that they can play well together and they can eat up some bottom pairing minutes. And I thought they had a solid game against Chicago. And it's nothing but a start, but it's a start. So at this point, I think you give them some room to run. You see how they do, especially with this upcoming week where you're going to have a ton of really good competition coming up the pipe. So really, I understand that it's probably not great for Ryan Graves. It's probably not great for them trying to rebuild him into something that they can either just continue to use or try to move on from. But we know this team wants to get itself back on track. We know this team wants to keep itself in the race and in the hunt. So really, if you're not aiding them in that goal, you're probably going to find yourself on the outside looking in. So I want to see what this pair does together for a couple games together. And if they're able to recapture some of that magic from about a season and a half ago, that's good news. But really, like you said, it's rearranging deck chairs, and hopefully eventually they can stop the sinking ship and those deck chairs are actually going to get some sun, but we will see.
Hopefully you can hit on one, I think that's the nice way of putting it. Hopefully you can hit on one of these pairs and it can be, I guess, stable for the rest of the season. I guess that's the goal for them. And I do like Ryan Shea more in a third pairing role than I do in a second pairing role, just overall. Again, I think Ryan Shea, he's had some really good games this season. He's also had some really not so good games this year. I thought on Sunday that was the best game he has played in the last, 3 to 4 weeks, as I said on Monday's show. So again, having him in that role, third pair, I just think it suits him a bit more. Just because, again, prior to this year, Pat, he had hardly been playing top 4 minutes for the Penguins. And now you have Brett Kulak, who has a history of playing in the top 4, especially on the second pair. Get him with Chris Letang, see if that can help matters a bit. And I think they're going to give that pairing a bit of a longer leash. Honestly, I wrote about that for the Hockey News a couple weeks ago when they made that trade, and I still think that's the right call, in my opinion. Yes, I know Brett Kulak got walked pretty bad by Max Domi last week, but I still think they're going to give that pair at least a little bit of a long leash, and you're not touching the top pair with Wotherspoon and Karlsson. So there you have it for the lineup notes. Again, Karlsson will play tonight. Connor Dewar, he's available. He left practice a little early on Monday, but he's all good. Chinakhov, not ready to play yet. I'm sure he'll play probably Thursday, if not then Saturday, but I'm going to go ahead and say on Thursday. And then Stuart Skinner on the hill tonight as expected. Pat, unless you have anything else to add, I think that's going to do it for the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Pat and I will be back on Wednesday to recap this game against Carolina. And of course, it's Wednesday. We got to give out our weekly MVP for Warrior Helmet Wednesday. And we're going to get you all set for a pretty fun 2026. This year has been awesome on the pod. We've seen so much growth, so many new people come and listen and watch our show, listen to these two knuckleheads just talk puck every day. And we appreciate it so much. We really do. We'll discuss more about that on the Wednesday edition. But for Patrick Damp, I'm Hunter Hodes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Wednesday.